Okay kids, now, despite your overwhelming support of my beautiful taxidermied rosellas, you might notice that they are no longer on the piano in the lounge room. They are now in the study where no one has to see them except me. This is very sad. You voted, almost all of you said I should get to keep the rosellas, but my family decided they just didn't want to see them anymore and they shifted them without my permission. So this is where they will now live, in here with me and you, and we can look at them all the time. Thanks for voting. I'm sorry that we lost. See ya. Hello everyone, welcome. I'm so excited today because for weeks I've just been dying to show you my sand, and there's been all these other things that I've had to do, and now finally we make it to the day where we talk about sand. So today's interesting object in my house is actually less of an object and more of a shelf with all my little sands over here. So you can see them in the background. You've probably been noticing them in almost every video that I make. And today we're going to have a look at a few, and I'm going to explain to you why I find sand so fascinating. And who knows, by the end of this, some of you might also love it as well. So you know I have lots of sands. I think I'm up to nearly 100 different samples. I haven't actually catalogued all of them yet, but I want to show you how I arrange them into this container here. So each one of my sands has a little label on the bottom of the jar that says where it's from. And then inside this container that I have, I've written down the different samples, where they come from. And then each sand has its own little slides. Let me show you one. All right, for instance, here's some red sand from the desert. So there's a little glass slide, and on it I've just stuck a little bit with glue onto the slide so that I can then pop it in my microscope and have a look when I want to see again. So I've got all the different ones here. I don't know if you can see that there's all little circles with the different colours on it. And I'm just gathering more and more. Now I thought when I got this little box that holds 100 sand samples that would be plenty, but I've nearly run out, so I had to order 2 more boxes just in case. Kids from all over the school, some of you, your sands are going to be shown today. Some of you brought me back sands from holidays. You've been collecting it all over the place. And I just need to say this one thing. If you do collect sand from another country and try and bring it back to Australia, then at the airport you need to tell the people in customs that you have sand in your luggage. You can say, we've got this bottle of sand or this bit of sand, and they might say, sure, take it, which is what they usually say, or they might say, actually, you're not allowed to take that from that country, and they might take it away from you, and that's fine too. So river sand is usually a bit more angular, which means it has sharp edges and angles, maybe more jagged, I suppose, whereas beach sand is often more rounded from rolling in the waves. Okay, now I want you to compare that with some pictures of just general, normal, beigey kind of sand that we find on beaches whenever you go somewhere. This is from the ocean or from beaches. And you'll notice in this that they're often smaller grains of sand, not always, and they're often more rounded. So have a look at these photos and see the difference between the river sand and the ocean sand. And then I have some sand that has been collected from deserts. Now the last group of sands that I want to show you just now are called mineral sands. And these are ones that are dug up in quarries from the ground, from ancient sand deposits that are just there naturally. And in these sands, there are special metals that people like to use across the world. So you might have heard of titanium. Well, actually, they get titanium, not all of it, but a lot of it, from sand deposits, which are in Australia, in a special little mineral that they find in the ground. And zircon is the last mineral sand that I have here. And zircon is where you get zirconium from. Zirconium is a metal. It's another one from the periodic table. You may or may not have heard of it. People use it in products for making them whiter, so things like ceramics. It's also been used in hip replacements and bone replacements in the body because it doesn't react with things and it goes into the human body really well without your body rejecting it. So zirconium is a great element that we find also in sand. Let me just break down some of those groups a bit more, show you some samples. By the end of this, you're going to be a super sand expert. All right, the first ones I want to show you are volcanic sand. So these are sands that come from maybe islands where there's been volcanoes. Sometimes inside it you can see what looks like little rocks of basalt or something like that, broken down small. And sometimes you can see what looks like pumice. It's kind of an ashy sort of color, a bit boring really, but it looks very different to the other. And they're both volcanic sands. So have a look at these photos now. The next type of sand probably leads into one of my favorite groups, although I think I say that about nearly every type of sand because there's so much good sand out there. But this is the stuff that you find either on coral reefs or on beaches where there are lots of sea creatures, so shells and things like that. Now this type of sand is made up of broken coral, sometimes shells. I often find little bits of sea urchin spines in there. And also, sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll get to see these little grains, which look like a star. You'll see them later on, and they're clear like glass. And they come from sea sponges. Now the last group of photos I'm going to show you are from sands that are made also of tiny little rocks, but I suppose what we usually call them is minerals. And these sands are often called silicate sands. And this is partly because if you look at the little grains in sand, you might notice sometimes that you can kind of see through it a little bit. They're transparent sometimes, and they're all different colors, and it's almost like having little bits of colored glass to look at. Then some beaches you might find black sand, and if you look at that up close you'll see little bits of the silicates like I was explaining, and then you'll find other little bits of dark black things or brown things in there that make that sand look a different color. Now this one really excited me, this sand. A couple of girls at our school came back from a holiday and had brought me this sand that looks like a kind of ugly grey colour. I thought, oh, I wonder what that will look like. And when I put it under the microscope, it wasn't anything that impressive. But then I shifted it to my other microscope and shone some light up through it from the bottom. And suddenly I realised that half of the grains of sand inside this sand were actually green. They were made from olivine, which is a green mineral that naturally grows in rocks and in the wild, if you want to call it. And when I put it under the microscope, the green color shone through, and oh, it's so beautiful. Have a look at this. But I think I have one sand that is my all-time favorite. It came from my husband. He found it when he was walking one day at a beach in South Australia. And on the beach, the sand looked a little bit purple in colour. And he collected me up some of this sand and brought it home, and I put it under the microscope. And I'm pretty sure some of you in grade 5, 6 were the first ones to ever see this sand under the microscope because I showed you. It is absolutely stunning. It's like opening a little box of jewels, and it glitters under the light. It is lovely. Now, the photos I'm about to show you don't do it justice. It's so much more beautiful in real life, but I'm going to just show you these photos that I have and see if you also just fall in love with sand just a little bit. Okay, now that's enough banging on about sand. My family's absolutely sick to death of it. I'm glad I could talk to you about it. Thank you for collecting sand from all your holidays and travels. As you can see, I've got them all here. So the final thing I want to show you now is that recently, rather than only looking at sand, when I was looking at it, I thought, this is so beautiful. There are so many gorgeous things in there. I wonder if I could pick out individual grains of sand and see what they look like. So I spent quite a lot of time actually picking out little bits of sand from the sand samples that I have. And I do this by looking through this microscope, and I have special tiny tweezers that are very, very fine, and also some needles and things that I can move grains around. And I've made the grains into some photographs to show you. And each one of the tiny little things in this picture is a grain of sand. So hopefully this will help you to appreciate just how incredibly gorgeous nature can be. Good evening, welcome to Science News at Peter and Abby McDonald's house. This evening we have 2 more science news stories for you. At the end of this, we ask you to go on Google Classroom and vote for the most interesting science story. Of course, we have our glasses and our television screen here. An octopus has made a brazen escape from the National Aquarium in New Zealand by breaking out of its tank, slithering down a 50-metre drain pipe and disappearing into the sea. Inky, a common New Zealand octopus, made his dash for freedom after the lid of his tank was accidentally left slightly ajar. Due to the evidence of suction cup prints, staff believe that in the middle of the night, while the aquarium was deserted, Inky climbed to the top of his glass enclosure, down the side of the tank, and travelled across the floor of the aquarium. It is thought that he then squeezed his football-sized body into the drain in the floor. Octopuses are known to be great escape artists, and Inky proved to be just that. The drain pipe was 50 metres long and opened into the sea.
A massive procession of caterpillars, over 7 metres long, has paraded through Alice Springs. The Northern Territory's government website warns against touching what are called processionary caterpillars. They are the larvae of the bag shelter moth, and the hairs leave human skin itchy for days. But the processionary caterpillars are much more than just fascinating to look at. The length of the procession can be an indicator of how harsh the coming cold season will be and whether there will be extreme frosts. The longer the procession, the more extreme the cold. This helps people know when certain foods will be available or unavailable, which is essential for survival when you're living traditionally from the land. Thank you.
Good night and good evening. Until next time. Once upon a time, in a faraway land made of Lego, lived 2 minifigures. One was called Danielle.
I'm called Danielle.
And the other was Sunny. I'm Sunny! It was almost lunchtime, and Danielle and Sunny were waiting to go through security at Melbourne Airport. Danielle was taking off her belt before stepping through the metal detector.
Do I have to take the coins out of my pocket too? Oh, also I have a watch. Oh, and a necklace.
Sunny was getting a little bit too close to the X-ray machine. Danielle had just made her way through the metal detector when she realised that Sunny wasn't behind her. She turned to find that Sunny had somehow managed to get himself stuck in the X-ray machine, and the security officers were trying to pull him out through the other side. Help! Sunny's head disappeared through the flap. Actually, this is kind of cool down here. Can you see my vertebrae on the X-ray machine? They're the bones that go down my back, in case you didn't know. Finally, they made their way out of the gate and onto the tarmac, where they had to walk to the aeroplane. They took my pocket knife at security. They said it would be dangerous to take it on the plane.
I think it might be dangerous just taking you on the plane, Sunny.
As the pair walked along, a bee flew past Danielle's face.
How do you think insects stay in the sky, Sunny?
I don't know. They are light and they just float there?
Like a helium balloon?
I guess. Something about this didn't seem quite right. Danielle was just about to say so when a bird flew past.
How do you think birds stay in the sky then? They are definitely heavier than insects.
Well, that's easy. They glide on the wind.
But what if there is no wind?
These were very good questions, and neither Danielle nor Sunny could come up with a good answer. They continued on their way across the tarmac when suddenly a large aeroplane flew past, giving them a huge fright. Both minifigures screamed.
Ah! What about airplanes?
What were we talking about again?
Oh, Sunny, how do they stay up in the sky? They are so big. It's like having a blue whale flying around.
Sunny was uncertain. He tried throwing his camera up into the sky, but it fell down. He tried throwing his hat up into the sky, but it fell down too. Well, cameras and hats, they don't stay up in the sky. I just tested it.
I wonder if it's something to do with wings. Most things that fly have wings.
At this point, the two were stumped. They had no idea how something as big as an aeroplane could stay in the sky. They decided to call on the help of their 430 friends at Whitehorse Primary School. Will Danielle and Sunny be able to discover how aeroplanes stay in the sky? Will their friends at Whitehorse Primary School help them? And will Sunny ever see his pocket knife again? Find out in next week's episode of Science Adventures in LegoLand. And finally, just to see if you've been listening and if you've learned anything in this little segment about the wonderful world of sand, I'm going to leave you with a science sand mystery. Because last year, my family, we went overseas and we went to a country called Latvia. And in Latvia, I met a man who loved sand as well, and he had bottles of it hanging all over his walls. And he gave me some of his genuine Latvian billion-year-old sand. And I was like, yes, this is great. I was so excited, brought it home, put it under the microscope. And then I saw what you're about to see in these photographs. I had been really excited about it, but when I saw it, I felt a little bit differently. I want you to have a look. See if you can figure out why I wasn't quite as excited as I had been when I came home and looked at this sand. Let's see if you can see what I saw when I looked under the microscope.